Hello.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we're going to be talking about the death penalty and why it should be abolished across the country. The money spent on execution is not something we as the public think about very often, but keep in mind, those are your tax dollars at work. Abolishment of the death penalty has been an ongoing controversy dating as far back as the 1600s. My own personal curiosity has driven me to obtain some information and try to convince you that the death penalty should be abolished as well. I will explain in further detail the history of the death penalty, the states which have abolished it and why, the Eighth Amendment in the Bill of Rights, the fear in criminals, and lastly, the expense that it costs the public. Let's go back a few decades. Capital punishment is the use of death as a sanctioned punishment. The country's first legal execution was in 1607. George Kendall was shot in Virginia for spying on the Spanish government. After his execution, the death penalty was originated to try to scare criminals from making bad decisions, in lieu of dying as the punishment. Now that we know a little bit about the death penalty, we can talk briefly about the states which have abolished it and why. There are a total of 17 states that have abolished the death penalty to date. Those 17 states, listed on the PowerPoint presentation, not only share a lower homicide rate per year, but they save thousands of taxpayers' dollars in the process. It has been said that culture and religion has also played parts on these decisions they've made. Although 17 states have abolished the death penalty, that still leaves us with 35 states who continue to use this as a form of punishment. Now this is where it gets a little deeper. Let's talk a little bit about the Bill of Rights. The Eighth Amendment in the Bill of Rights protects citizens from cruel and unusual punishment being inflicted upon the government, upon them by the government. The reality of this is that the government is killing people for committing crimes. This is against the Eighth Amendment, isn't it? What could be more cruel and unusual than taking the life of somebody? This is what they're in jail for in the first place, being cruel. As the government feels that executing is protecting us, they are only sending the wrong message. What kind of leadership does this show? It doesn't. What kind of law-abiding citizens or government breaks the line of their own Bill of Rights? These criminals are not scared of death. It is our responsibility as the public to make them scared of something. Make them sit and wonder and think about what they did for the rest of their lives, living in a cell alone forever. We, the public, hope that the fear of the death penalty will scare these criminals away from doing what they do so often and so tragically. However, I think maybe dying is what they ultimately want. Murderers always know what will happen to them, which is why most of the time they actually take their own lives. By knowing they will not sit in jail or worry or regret about what they've done, we are letting them win. We're letting them get what they've asked for. In Joe Mazzurli's article, he stated, "Life in prison is worse punishment and more effective deterrent. For those of you who believe in the death penalty, keep in mind that death may be too good for them. With the death sentence, the suffering is over in an instant. The death penalty and life in prison could last for decades. Why are we giving murderers what they want? They know their lives are over from the minute they commit the crime. By sending them to prison for life, we are making them sit and ponder on what they've done, and live with it. The amount of money that goes into an execution is even unheard of. For example, these are just some of the things that we, the public, pay for. Attorneys, interpreters, expert witnesses, secretaries, court reporters, psychiatrists, and jury consultants. The budgeting of money for the entities involved is included, and even the length and complicity of the process. It is clear that the death penalty costs way more than life in imprisonment would, and that's even with the fact that it costs $77 a day to hold one prisoner. To conclude my presentation, I would like you to think deeply about the points that I have just made. This has been an ongoing controversy for almost 4 decades. What can we do to help? Keep in mind the states who have already taken action, and keep in mind the even larger amount of those who haven't, or even keep in mind the fact that we're going against the Bill of Rights. America has a hard enough time in this economic struggle as it is. Maybe if we took away such a demeaning cost, we would get back on our feet and start ending this modern day depression. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. What would another suggestion be for the most recent massacre in Colorado besides the death penalty?
Another suggestion would be to save the money that we're spending by possibly executing this gentleman and leaving him sit in a cell in solitary confinement for the rest of his life, and give him 23 hours of daylight and 23 hours in a cell and 1 hour of daylight a day, and make him live through the decision that he made by throwing his life away and taking the lives of others.
Makes sense.
Anybody else?
All right. Isn't anyone worried that by abolishing the death penalty, you're giving more leeway to offer parole?
That is something you can be nervous about when it comes to the jury. You can't always depend on them to make harsh decisions if they're compassionate about something that they shouldn't be. But you can look at it a good way in saying that hopefully people would be knowledgeable enough not to give somebody parole when they've done such a terrible thing. Anybody else?
What is your personal opinion on the matter?
My personal opinion on the death penalty would be actually the complete opposite. I am all for the death penalty, and I think if you do something to somebody so terrible, I think the same exact thing should be done to you.
Well said.